Hi, it's Gadget UK here again. I think I've solved the problem with this car. I'm not entirely sure how, but yeah, seemingly it's working. This is now running at the moment. I've been playing Top Hunter. I'll just reset this. Go back to the menu. You see there's no graphical corruptions there on the white screen. Let's go back to Top Hunter. And it's all games, you know, but I've just been using this one as an example. So you know, you can see there were nothing on the white background there, and then once this starts, no corruptions, none at all. You know, and I played this, you know, for a while back, a good 20 minutes. I even left it paused for a good 10 minutes and came back and it hadn't rebooted and there were no problems. Yeah, very strange. Anyway, I'll show you what I just did. Not really sure how I've solved this. Right, I'm sorry the light's not very good in here this evening. But yeah, a couple of things. The first thing I did, obviously I've examined these boards pretty thoroughly. Previous days I actually resoldered all the pins and all these chips on this particular board, including these CPLDs or FGBJs. I shouldn't really just keep assuming that these are CPLDs. I need to look them up. I'll do that later. I'll do some sort of final video on these 120-in-1 cards, just summarising, you know, what I've learnt about these, what chips are on there, and you know, roughly what I understand, really, what I've learned. Anyway, so I've soldered all the pins on all the chips on this board, including the CPU. I did some experimentation with the coupling caps on the CPU. I've checked, you know, I've done some work looking at the voltages, and that's something I'm going to do. An additional modification I'm going to do to these boards, including my 161-in-1 and the 60-in-1 I've ordered. Probably the other 160-in-1 that I've ordered as well. Sorry, 120-in-1 that I've ordered as well. So I've got a couple of carts on the way, a 60-in-1 and another 120-in-1. Yeah, but you know, these diodes are used to, you know, the 5 volt comes in on that pin there, runs through one diode, then goes through the other, and each diode, if you're not aware, will drop the voltage by 0.7 volts. So you've got 5 volts coming in, you end up with something like 3.6 volts coming out to the rest of the board, and that's one factor, something that's I'd thought that may be causing my problem. On reflection, I don't think it is, but still, these chips, all of them, are designed to operate 3.3 volts. And the whole 3.3 volt thing can be, you know, these chips can be quite finicky. As soon as you start putting 3.6 volts into 3.3 volt chip, you can start running into some problems from experience. So I've got some little 1 amp regulators, and I'm going to mount them on the board. I'll probably scratch some of this away here because it's one of these ones, you know, a little surface mounted thing. Scratch some of or find the earth point, it might be there, it might be somewhere over here, I don't know, and remove the diodes and feed the +5 into the regulator and the 3 out. I'm hoping that 5 volts, the 5.18 or whatever that's on here, is going to be sufficient to power for that regulator to be able to output a nice 3.3 volt supply line. But still, yeah, so done a lot of work on there, that made no difference. I did some work on the other board as well. I did same thing, CPLD/FPGA, don't know which one it is yet until I check. All of the pins, you know, resoldered all around. Same with these two, the M1, the S1. Didn't touch any of the C chips. Had a really good thorough inspection of this a minute ago, and this was one of the last things I'd done. And there are a lot of dodgy looking pins. It's not really been soldered very professional. Well, I say very professionally, I couldn't do a probably much better job myself, but they're a bit, you know, they are a bit questionable, some of the connections on there. But yeah, using this little magnifying glass here, and you can actually see through here. I'll see if I can use that in a minute just to show you. But like, I think it was one of these character C chips here, which obviously I think these hold the graphics from what I understand. There was just like this little blob of white, I can't even describe it, it was like a creamy coloured bit in between two pins, you know, like a bit of fluff or something, I don't know, very odd. So I thought, okay, that's the only thing I can see, so I sort of scraped that away with my finger, it just came straight off. And then the other thing I did was to re-examine this board. Now, one of the first things, the very, very first things I noticed with this board when I first got it, and I was experimenting or trying to understand what was wrong with the NAM sound and stuff, and just generally inspecting the board. I don't know if you can see, there's a point here, and it's not going to come out very well because of the light. I'll use the magnifying glass if I can through, to see if you can see that. It's pretty hard actually, but there's a point on the board, sort of there, can you see it? There's like a little line where someone scraped with a scalpel or something across the tracks, and of course that was the first thing I spotted when I very, very first got this, and I thought, maybe that's something to do with my NAM VROM, the sample problems for the PCM music, and it wasn't. You can actually see some other points, and you can see them just there where I scratched off the silk screen just to be able to test these points, because the actual wire was very difficult to trace through. And I checked that both sides, followed the wires, checked where it went from origin to sort of end point, and there were no problems with those at all. But the only other thing I did is, just like I say, re-inspected that again with a magnifying glass. It looks fine. It's really hard. It is really, really, really hard, even through a magnifying glass, to tell if any of those are questionable. But I just sort of scraped it with my nail, and it felt like some bits or something came off it. And then I put it back in, and the whole thing's fine. I've been playing it for a good half hour. So, was it the dodgy, questionable bit in between a couple of what were probably address lines or data lines there? Not sure. Was it conductive material? No idea. Presumably it's going to have some sort of resistance of some sort, and don't know. Is that it? Is it? Is it this? I'm more inclined to think it's probably that. I might need to get a bigger, some sort of, larger magnifying glass or something. Something's going to be a really good zoom in on that, in order to be able to determine, is there any sort of damage there on one of those tracks? Because it would fit, if you're getting like almost, it's like an arcing type connection. It's not going to be arcing, probably. It could do. You're going to get electrons hopping across a very small gap. It's not going to arc as such, because it's probably, it's very low voltage, low current. So it wouldn't really describe it as an arc. But anyway, you can see my point that maybe that was it. That certainly would explain the strange behaviour to do with the capacitive reactance type thing that was going on there. And I've had this board out now, just fiddled about with it, so let's just put it back together. I'm going to stick it back in, and we'll see if it still works. Well, as you can see, it's back on. And I've not reassembled it, I've just shoved the carts in there. So, there's every opportunity for, if it's to do with wiring or whatever, or loose connections or something to do with the board, you'd expect it to start again, but it seems alright. Fingers crossed that this has resolved this, but it's been a very, very odd problem. The thing is with this, it's been intermittent in nature anyway to a degree, because let's just turn this down a little bit. This problem sort of manifested itself as I've been doing different things to the main board, so for example, I started consolidation part 1, and afterwards, I'd reassemble it and I would test with that cart, and it was okay, and by the time I came to consolidation part 2, I reassembled it all, put that cart in to test it, and it started playing up. It was doing a watchdog, strange things going on. I thought, what's going on here? Disconnected everything, reseated the bridge, put the cart back in, and after messing around for a few minutes of doing that, it would start being, it'd be okay, and I wouldn't have any problems with it for a week or 2 weeks. It'd be fine. Up until the next point where I start tinkering around and doing other things and plugging and unplugging the cart in, several times, testing different things. And then it would start again, and and it did that a couple of times, just for very, very short periods of time, where, like I say, after maybe 5 or 10 minutes of messing around and plugging, checking the board, is something wrong with my wire, have I done something wrong to the MVS? Eventually it would just work. I wouldn't have changed anything, it would just work, and it'd be fine for prolonged periods of time. So I don't know, only time will tell. What I do know is I've got another 120 in the way, 120 in one on the way. So I'm going to do some comparisons anyway. I'm going to take the 2 boards out of the new cart and swap them around, because I want to determine, are they all consistently got dodgy VROMs for the same games, or is it, as I suspect it is, they don't verify these, and because they're using reclaimed chips, some of them are a bit iffy. Anyway, but as you can see, that's working. And there's, like I say, I haven't done anything to the MVS board. The MVS board's been working fine. Prior to this, I had a good session of Metal Slug 2, got up to about the 6th mission or something on it, almost near the end. That sort of convinced me that it was definitely nothing definitely nothing with the system, which I already knew anyway, and I played that off the 161-in-1 just to make sure it wasn't to do with, you know, this whole idea of this 3.3 volt down to, you know, 3.3 volt provided, you know, data lines or whatever output from the car, you know, interacting with a 5 volt based system. And I'm not even sure whether that statement's true or not, because I guess I don't really know enough about the chips on here. As I said, this is whatever they are, CPLDs, FPGAs. I don't know whether it's possible to output so you get, you know, the same sort of voltage levels as you would with 5 volt sort of TTL logic or not. I don't know if you can do that when you've only got a 3.3 volt input, or whether TTL only is in the region of 2.5 volts anyway, I think, from what I remember. I could be wrong on that, so I don't know, but yeah, it's working. It's still, I still like to leave the case open on this and say that it's working now. It's still a little bit mysterious in the sense that I haven't got a definitive answer. I'm kicking myself really, because when I saw that little bit of fluff between those pins, perhaps I should have measured the resistance between those two pins. Possibly even checked the connectivity of those tracks without interfering with the little, you know, as it did, where I just rubbed my finger across that point of the board. So yeah, anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for all the suggestions and stuff, and I'll see you soon.